Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 4, Brentford nil. This is a statement win. And also to address this, I've not told you or anyone, but there is no intro on this podcast because the last two have been blocked on Spotify for copyright infringement on the no copyright music that we used. So for all the people that have spent years complaining about the music, you've won. There's no intro now. That's the intro.
I'd like to think that people hate it so much they've gone to the lengths to flag it to Spotify as copyright infringement just to get it removed. That's what I'm going to hope has happened rather than the kind of real life, probably like AI technicalities of it all. I'm going to hope it's a group of really, really disgruntled listeners that have been like, right, I've finally had enough. I'm taking this to the
sick
top.
of this. I'm sick of this. So the intro's gone, mate. But one thing that is for sure, that is for certain with this episode, mate, is we are two very happy bunnies. And I
Yes,
think it's
sir.
fair to say that this may well be the performance of the Unai Emery era.
This really, really felt like, in a lot of ways, I don't think it it kind of feels quite as pivotal maybe, but reminded me a lot of the Newcastle game at home
Yeah.
towards the back end of last season. Just like a real kind of like accomplished back to front performance that it felt very, very complete. And we kind of said this a couple of weeks ago about the City game, and kind of a couple of interesting games in between then and now with the Liverpool game, which kind of felt like an okay performance. I don't think we were particularly bad at Anfield. I felt like we were pretty middle of the road, but middle of the road doesn't get it done at Anfield ultimately. And then kind of everything about the game midweek was weird, and so it kind of felt that the performance followed suit, and so it kind of meant that I think you went in today kind of not really knowing what you were going to get, but what we did get was, as I say, one of those really, really complete back to front excellence that Unai Emery sides just put together every now and again. And yeah, every now and again, Villa just walk out at Villa Park and everything kind of clicks right from the off. And I felt like today was one of those games. So yeah, definitely under that top shelf of games that we've had under Unai, mate, particularly as, we made this Bournemouth side look pretty mediocre when they've been anything but, a win today would have put them back into the top two, I think. So, yeah, in terms of the kind of opening segment of this Premier League season, top opposition, I thought we made look bang average today.
That's what's so impressive, isn't it, mate? Because I think the thing that has been frustrating, maybe more towards the start of the season, but certainly, at times throughout the Emery era, is when teams come to Villa Park and they park 10 men behind the ball and, they deploy that low block because the possession heavy style of football that we, tend to sort of lean on in those games, it can be quite painful to watch at times. Let's try and break down these teams. And straight from the get-go, I think our hand was forced in a good way because, this tends to happen against a lot of the top sides who, relentlessly press you and hound you and want the ball. It means that we can actually try and play football. And although it didn't actually start that way because we kind of thought, we've got this full-on press, we've got this exciting Bournemouth attacking line. You've got Antoine Semenyo, who is kind of the man of the Premier League right now, and Evan Nilsson in great form. Kluivert, you could say the same. Very, very good attacking player, a dangerous attacking trio. And right from the off, we just thought, do you know what? We're going to play this long. This is how we're going to beat the press. We're going to fire these long balls over the top, and we're going to try and give the Bournemouth centre halves an absolute, hopefully it's the Ollie Watkins show, and we could probably talk about Ollie Watkins a little bit later on, mate. But I think we really unsettled Bournemouth being so direct so early on. And, as the game went on, we were obviously able to play some wonderful football as they kind of came onto us and attacked us. But it was an interesting matchup between, Bournemouth get a lot of praise, and rightfully so, for how they play football and how they attack on the front foot. And Iriola gets a lot of praise as well. And again, rightfully so. I actually think the style of football is very similar. The stark difference between Unai Emery and Adoni Iriola is the speed at which the game is played at, right? Bournemouth play the game at 100 miles per hour, whereas we're a bit more controlled. It's maybe a bit more laboured at times. And it certainly has been, since Diaby left the club, really. We don't really have that many pacey players, do we? But Unai was able to absolutely school Iriola. And there's so many things to talk about in this game, mate. There's so many. Buendia, let's start with Buendia, right? Because
Yeah.
that is a naughty little knuckleball, right? That is absolutely outrageous. It's the only thing he could have done to get that in. It was a beautiful free kick. Petrovic stood no chance, but Buendia picked up almost exactly where he left off in that Manchester City game when he went off injured, didn't he, mate? Because I think it's fair to say, and we may have mentioned it in the podcast, he was undoubtedly our best player on the pitch up until that moment. And that rings true for the time he was on the pitch today again.
I thought it was really, really interesting. You kind of had the contrast between, I think, like a couple of minutes earlier, was it Tavernier that had a free kick in an almost identical position of the other end, which he kind of put, into the upper tier of the north, and then little Emery steps up and kind of does exactly what he couldn't with this, like, really, really deft. And the thing is with, like Petrovic came in for a bit of criticism after, like, kind of on the punditry, because it's not tucked away in a corner, but really because the goalkeeper has such little visibility, right, of the ball, because you've kind of got the Bournemouth wall of four, you've got the kind of draft excluder, if you will, kind of behind the wall. Then Villa have got a wall of three just in front and to the left of the wall. So the keeper's got no sight of the ball whatsoever. And what that basically means is, as long as you can get that ball on target a foot or so away from him to his right, obviously he stood to the left-hand side of the goal, the wall to the right. As long as you can get it up and over, you've got a very good chance of scoring. And that makes it sound quite simple, but it's really in that range that definitely falls into the kind of, as every time you see a free kick from that range and they try and get that up and over on it and they can't, and it just goes over the bar, the line is, it's probably too close, right? You want it kind of, no, it was almost exactly kind of 20 yards. You want more 20, 25, right? When you've got that little bit of extra distance, sorry, for the ball to drop. And what basically Emi does is kind of recognizes that as long as he can get that up and over on it, he's got a basic guarantee that it's going in. We don't see a lot of free kicks down the Villa, I don't think. I was racking my brains. I tried to find the stat to see if someone could do the hard yards for me, but I haven't, as to when the last one was. I know that in Unai's first game, when Luca Dean scored that free kick against United, that ended a streak of ages, probably going back to someone like Hurahan, maybe even in the Championship, before. I think it had been that long since we scored one. So it's not something we do a tremendous amount of, but it's a really, really nice goal, and yeah, another opportunity for us to kind of give Emi Buendia his flowers, really, because he's been, well, the surprise package, I think, of Villa's season so far. Nobody expected this. I can't imagine even he expected this. I think we were both kind of felt that, he'd kind of been shoehorned into that role. He wasn't the perfect player, but he was just an available player, and kind of given that, probably wasn't, the, eighth, ninth, 10th names on people's team sheets before we came into the season. I think, the fact that he's kind of nailed his place down, has delivered some really, really big moments, delivered some really, really good goals as well. Is full credit to him. So to get that moment in front of the Holte end, to get the show rolling, I thought it was a really, really nice moment and a really, really nice goal.
But to go and one up it, right, Amadou, it's just it's outrageous, isn't it? But that little Megs from Morgs before, that's a player, again, Morgs is finding his feet. He looks like the player he looked like the first half of last season, and Amadou picking out the corner. I think what I love about these two goals, mate, is, these are two guys that are getting written off. These are the two guys, you open up Twitter and these are the two that have sort of been the stick that have been, and they've been beaten for no reason, right? Because, I don't buy all of this injury stuff with Amadou. Oh, he's injury, but yeah, he has been injured a lot at Villa. It has to be said, but I did the maths, and I think he was only injured for like 33 days in his entire career before joining Villa. So
Yeah.
like it's not like we've signed a sick note. No, he's maybe become a bit of a sick note, but we didn't sign a sick note. And it's a wonderful goal. So, really happy for him, just the energy that he brings to this side. As each game goes on, he just looks more and more dominant and really comfortable. And it's like it's coming at a good time as well, right? Because we've got Yuri Tillemans coming back from injury, and he's a player who I think we have missed. And when he is fully fit, I think he probably does take that space from Amadou Onana just by virtue of what Yuri has done so consistently since he stepped foot in the club, right? But it's such a good problem to have that almost every single midfielder that we've got at the club now that can play in this position is you can make a case for any of them starting, and that includes somebody like Lamar Bogard, who came on obviously later in this game. It was a beautiful goal by Onana. Petrovic is a big lad, and he really had to find that corner, and boy did he. And the goals come at quite an important time, mate, because whilst Bournemouth didn't necessarily create all that much in this game, there is always that anxiety because they are such a good team. And there were a few instances, not only in the first half, but in the second half, where we were sort of caught dawdling a little bit in possession. And a team as busy as Bournemouth and as proactive as Bournemouth tend to score a lot of goals from these kind of situations. One or two sort of sloppy passes from Esri. There's a back pass back to Emmy that just was so out of character. I did not know what to say. In the first half, I think it was Amadou that maybe had his pocket picked by Alex Scott that almost led to something. So, well, that led to the free kick that you mentioned just a minute ago, mate, with Tavernier, didn't it? So, there were these instances where, sort of same old Villa could come and creep in and come back to haunt you, but we get the two goals before half time, keep the clean sheet. Emmy makes that save as well. That sort of chipped shot, was that from
Mm.
Evan Nilsson? I can't remember because Semenyo had fouled McGinn, and I was I was focusing on that. I didn't know whether that was going to get called back.
Oh, so was this the deflected one?
Yes,
Yeah, the one that
the
kind of
pip
called the
over.
deflection is like looping over. I
Yeah,
think it's from Alex Scott actually.
England called up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, obviously I probably Emmy's probably a separate topical conversation, right? But that was a really good save.
Yeah, well, I think we can get into it, right? Because I think it's only fair, and you know, there were glimpses of it on. I mean, obviously we didn't do a podcast after Liverpool or after the Maccabi game. Um, Emmy gifts Salah a goal at Anfield,
Yeah.
and there's two instances in that Maccabi game where he almost manages to do the same. So, sort of coming into this, I'm thinking, do you know? And again, my feelings on Emmy Martinez have been very publicly documented on this podcast. I'm nowhere near as harsh on him as anybody else has been, but I've kind of got to that point where I was before this game sick to the sight of him, if I'm being totally honest and transparent. And I'm thinking, God, like I'm counting down the days till the transfer window opens, and hoping that somebody from Turkey or Saudi or wherever will just come in and take this problem away from us because uh especially with to talk about the Salah one briefly. Esri's reaction, that is a reaction of a man that is so done with Emi Martinez. Like he was furious. He was absolutely furious, and rightfully so. So coming into this game, I just wasn't feeling it, and I'm sick to death of talking about how I feel he's lost his aura and he just isn't the same. And every fist pump, it's a bit limp. But this felt like the Emi Martinez of old because that save, as we just mentioned, tipping it over the crossbar, was world class. One again because of the foul, I didn't necessarily know whether. Uh, well, I deemed it to be a foul. Obviously, the referee didn't because he didn't blow it. But it's one of them where is the ref going to blow? Do you leave it because you think the ref's going to blow? Do you make the save anyway and cover yourself? Obviously, Emi decided to do that, and it was the right thing because obviously the referee didn't blow to give a foul, and it was just a wonderful save. And you could kind of feel Emi sort of regaining his powers again, and then you see that in the second half with that penalty save, and the penalty is is ridiculous, right? But they're just going to be given. Unfortunately, that is the reality of Premier League officiating at this current time. But that penalty save from Emmy was so good, wasn't it, mate? So good to get. I mean, he's gone the right way. It's not the best penalty in the world from Semenyo, I think it must be said, but it's on target. And to get only one hand to it, he's over the ball. He's almost scooped it out from underneath him, right? And you've got to do, as a goalkeeper, Dan, you'll know, you've got to not only keep it from going in, but you also have to make sure that that doesn't fall to whoever's feet is following up with that rebound. And it was just wonderful. And I think it has to be said, because of how critical I've been of Emmy in recent times. That felt more like the Emmy Martinez that we had all universally fallen in love with as a fan base.
Spot on. Spot on. That first save from the deflected Alex Scott shot is like, that feels like a trademark of his. That kind of like those looping shots that feel like they're just going to dip under the crossbar. This one was it Harvey Barnes?
Yes.
Newcastle, a couple of like a season kind of very similar save, like those ones where he digs it out from under the crossbar. And like, look, as a very, very amateur goalkeeper myself, those saves where the ball is kind of like coming at you and you feel it's dipping and you know that there's a threat it's going to go in over your head are really, really difficult, because the most impressive thing about those saves is his awareness. Is Emi Martinez like knows, it's like, so being in those positions myself, the amount of times that I've been like kind of backpedaling and you end up like, you completely you think you're far closer to the goal than you are, and you just kind of like palm it up in the air, and then you just basically punch the ball into the air like on your 6-yard box, and then you create like a real situation. Or the complete opposite, whereby you think you've got a bit more time than you do, and you end up kind of like jumping backwards and then just like palming it into the roof of your own net. So for him to have the awareness and know exactly kind of where in that, like kind of in the box that he is, and then the exact trajectory that he needs to get up, to get his arm up there, to push it up and over the bar, which is like kind of like onrushing behind him, is like genuinely an amazing save. And I feel like that is his, obviously penalty saves aside, that is his hallmark. I feel like he's got so many saves like that, and he's fantastic in those situations. And then the penalty save is amazing. I basically watched, it felt like the Mamadashvili save.
Yeah.
I think it was Haaland earlier. It was like the exact same, but on the other side. In that, like, it feels that by the time the ball, and it's a Welsh, like, I agree, it's like, it's not tucked away in the corner, but you see far limper penalties than that go in. Like, it's pretty well struck, but it feels that somehow the keeper's managed to get down there. And it was the same with the Haaland one. The keeper's managed to get down there before to meet the ball, which is amazing. And like, the reaction times and how quickly he gets down there is like obscene. It really, really is. So, yeah, I think he needed this ultimately, like a clean sheet. We all know, like, even in the kind of peak Emery days, clean sheets weren't as commonplace as maybe we'd have liked them to be. There has always been, even when this Villa side was at its peak, there has always been an air of sloppiness about this Villa team, that defensively we were prone to kind of like losing our marbles every now and again. You kind of think back to the PSG semi-final and their first goal at Villa Park, when that ball comes across and it's Emmy and Powell kind of get caught in that moment of hesitation, and then I think it's Hakimi taps it in. So like, even on the biggest stages, this Villa side has been prone to like a defensive lapse in concentration. So to keep a clean sheet was really, really impressive. Semenyo is the man in form, as you rightly say, but they've got some really, really nice players going forward. So yeah, I felt it was a harsh penalty, actually. I felt personally that in the kind of light of the current era of Premier League officiating and the handball law, that wasn't a penalty, but maybe it's one of those where if the ref hadn't have given it, there probably wasn't enough grounds to give it, and vice versa, because the ref gave it, there wasn't like the kind of significant reason to not give it. Maybe it kind of fell into that tier, but I felt it was really close quarters, and they weren't really doing that whole, it's in a relatively natural position, it's really, really close quarters, there's not too much you can do to get his arm out of the way. I didn't think they were penalties currently. And so it did feel like a little bit maybe like justice had been done. But regardless, hell of a save from Emmy. And yeah, let's hope that that's a step on the right path, because yeah, it hasn't been the greatest couple of weeks for him.
Yeah, it's not, but it's what he needs. And I think you're right to say, mate, the clean sheet is almost as important as the 4 goals here.
Yeah.
Like, especially towards the end of that game when they've made all their subs. 6 subs have been made by both sides, obviously, because of the concussion sub that was made early on. brutal on that lad. That was the sub right back that came off like 30 minutes later. That's just absolutely brutal. But he was getting absolutely cooked. Um, it's there's always that anxiety that Villa are gonna do a Villa and concede a late goal and something sloppy's gonna happen. So was extra happy to keep that clean sheet. And again, shout out to Matty Cash. Dealt with Tavernier, dealt with Kluivert, dealt with Semenyo, dealt with Krupi at times when he came on as well. Um, Semenyo had to even swap sides to go and try and get down Luca Dean's side, where maybe on paper you would look at Dean and Buendia, who was often found himself down that side and think, yeah, I'm going to have a bit of a better time here, but neither of them two gave Semenyo absolutely anything. It's always really satisfying when somebody who is like bang in form comes to your ground and is just painfully average. Semenyo is unbelievable. Like I've got a lot of time for him. I really do. I think he as well. Like seeing him in person, he's big, mate. He's a powerful lad,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So you pair that with the pace, you pair that with the skills, you pair that with the eye for goal. He's a serious handful. So again, it's another Villa filler. It's another shout out to Matty Cash. What a performance! Again, it goes under the radar because everybody's been brilliant, right? Everybody has been
Yeah.
like to a T. I think the game state is something I want to talk about here, mate, because we're we're 2-0 up for a large portion of this game. They make their triple subs on around 60, 65, and they totally change things up, right? And I'm looking at the bench. The bench isn't it's not a bad bench at all, but I'm looking at the lineup. I'm looking at what they've done for the previous hour, and then I'm looking at the guys on the bench, and I'm thinking, I am not sure that we can make the changes and we can get that same effort and output from these guys coming in cold. And it's nothing against the subs, but because they all contributed to a goal when they came on, basically. But I looked at it and I thought, right, John McGinn, absolutely unbelievable. We've not talked about him yet, but what a fucking performance from John McGinn. That is a John McGinn monster class. Threw himself into absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But if we're being totally honest with ourselves at the moment, John McGinn is becoming a 70-minute player. So we're approaching that time where a sub kind of has to be made. And I'm thinking the same thing with Emi Buendia. Best player on the pitch. Absolutely, undoubtedly, Villa's best outfield player. Just coming back from injury. Conundrums are being presented. Okay, same with Onana. You think, right, Onana has never been a 90-minute man. He's going to come off at some point. Same with Kamara, always managing those little niggles that he tends to have. You can't change the whole midfield and expect us to win this game. So I was quite anxious about that. And then you obviously see the changes that were made. It was McGinn, Onana, Buendia at first, wasn't it, for Sancho, Yuri, and for Ross, right? And I'm thinking, oh God, I don't know about this. I don't know. I don't know if I'd have made those subs. Clearly, that's why I do a podcast to do Unai Emery manages Aston Villa, right? Because these guys came on and they brought it. They brought it. The Ross Barkley goal is interesting, mate, because set piece goal, first of all, feels like we've not scored too many of them recently. Although I'm sure the stats will deceive and say that we score all of our goals from set pieces. Doesn't feel like we scored many. But Ross Barkley, I'm pretty confident like most of his goals have been headers. So I'm really surprised that he's like allowed to run off his marker and nobody decides to follow him to the front post. It's a wonderful header. It's a great goal. And it's that sucker punch that we needed at the time, wasn't it, mate? Because there's about 15 minutes left on the clock at this point, and you're thinking, right, we're done. We're like Villa are actually going to do it. We're not going to do a Villa. Villa are actually going to do it. We're going to get out of this. And the subs that I have just been anxious about for no reason are contributing.
Yeah, that is really, really nice header, mate. Well, but I think both the last two goals are set pieces, right? The second one comes from a short routine, where it comes to Sancho. He puts it across to Yuri, and then kind of gets that little flick off Marlon on the way through.
That's generous calling it a flick. That is very generous calling it a flick.
I'm gonna, for the context of me saying on an Aston Villa podcast, I'm gonna say that he meant it. And so yeah, right. No, really, really nice. In this kind of era and how important set pieces have been like across the Premier League this season, it feels like something that we've been, as you say, like maybe, we used to be it was us in Arsenal for like a long time.
Yeah.
A kind of the real forefront of that set piece game. I feel like Austin McPhee is one of the kind of eminent set piece coaches, like in the Premier League, obviously with his time with Scotland and with Portugal and stuff like that. I feel like he's gained quite a reputation. Um, and so, yeah, and it kind of feels like maybe we don't do as much of that as we do, but maybe I've just become accustomed to it. I feel like a lot of it is short routines as well. So
Yeah.
like with the fourth goal, it's like easy to forget that that was like a corner kick routine. Shout out to Jadon Sancho as well. Actually,
Yeah.
got time on this pod. I thought that last couple of games, like I thought he coming out the Maccabi game, he was like one of the brighter sparks. And then today as well to get like obviously it won't go down as an assist, but really it's an assist.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it already, like everyone listening, I'd go and watch the highlights from the game and look at Jadon Sancho's reaction when the ball goes in off Martland. It's like he is genuinely buzzing, like genuinely buzzing. And it's like obviously it doesn't even end up being like his assist, but like you can see to him that like this does mean stuff to him actually. This does mean a bit to him actually. It's like a genuinely like heartwarming. I think it's Luca Dean, maybe. He's like over there with him and like he runs to Luca Dean and like they're like hugging each other and stuff like that. And it's like genuinely like you can feel that like bit by bit, just game by game, you see a little bit more. You see a little
Yeah.
bit more. And you kind of think, you know what, like when I feel like it is going to take a while, but like when Jadon Sancho is like fully match fit and like is fit and firing and like you can start to see that there are real green shoots there. And like it's really, really difficult to kind of like gauge exactly who or what Jadon Sancho is, or like, what would you pay for a Jadon Sancho? And it's like, but if you kind of take it in the same vein as like I think the Rashford one as just like a kind of let's just put our arm around him and see what he can do. And it's kind of been a few games now where I'm just like, I think the same with Morgs. I think the same with
Yeah.
Morgs. Just like, I don't feel like Morgs is quite the unstoppable force that he was, but like game by game, you're seeing 5% more, 5% more, and you're just like going back to players that you recognize. And obviously, Sancho is like far down. Morgs is kind of getting back to 85% of what he once was, whereas Jadon Sancho is like right at the other end of the scale. But the building blocks are there, and there's a real nice kind of moment in there where obviously I'm assuming he thinks he's gotten the assist, and he's like genuinely buzzing about it. But yeah, really, really happy for him. But if I can, mate, just to kind of go, it wouldn't be the Villa Villa podcast without some kind of existential crisis.
Yeah.
Where the hell's Harvey Elliott, dude?
Do you know what? I would like to think that it's like not personal. I would really like to think that it's nothing personal and that Unai just doesn't fancy him. It's worry. I I think, and not to like badmouth Sancho here, because again I share the same thoughts as you. I think he's getting better, and it's like nurture versus nature, all that kind of thing. Like good environment will provide good results. I'm a firm believer of that. But like I think if you go back to our transfer deadline day podcast, mate, we were clearly more buzzing with the Elliott signing. And
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I say we, not just as us two, I think as the fan base. I think we were all really excited by this. Some, under 21s player of the tournament, the Euros, real pedigree coming from Liverpool, exciting prospects. Like we said in the podcast, this isn't a signing that Aston Villa makes. And we've almost been vindicated by that, but in the wrong reason.
Yeah.
He's not played in over a month. I think he's only played 137 minutes. There was the comments about him playing too quickly and all this. Jacob Tanswell did a good piece in the Athletic, mate. I'm sure you'd have seen it a couple of weeks ago, kind of detailing. It was almost like a minute by minute recollection of transfer deadline day and how it all unfolded. And when you kind of see how heavily we were pursuing somebody like Lucas Paquetá, to then end up with Elliot, who is quite a different player, but one who I would probably argue is not better, but would present better value in many different areas. It does seem a little bit. It seems a little bit strange, but Unai clearly didn't want him, right? Unai clearly didn't want him, and then we have this situation where obviously it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now, but Monchi steps down from his role, and we've got is it Alabe from La Liga who came over. Um, yeah, I just hope it's not but like like I think the main thing, which is like the only thing that matters, is nobody knows, and nobody probably will know. And he seems like a good kid. I don't think he'd come out and run his mouth. I think he had the opportunity to in that Sunderland game, didn't he, mate?
Yeah,
When Sky interviewed him after the game, and he, maybe chose his words wisely, which I think was probably a smart thing to do. But I just think that that's probably the kid he is. Um, Nobody knows, nobody will know. So it's almost pointless speculating. But one thing that I can say with absolute confidence is managers lie. Managers lie. They come out and lie. And
yeah.
I'm sure he will be asked a million times about Harvey Elliott in upcoming press conferences. And he'll say he's a great kid. I've not got a problem with him. And that can be true, but it also cannot be true. And
It's really, really interesting. Mm.
it's like the politics of it all is like it's truly really difficult for like fans to get their head around, because managers like have their managers kind of have their opinions and have their things. And Unai's a pleasant guy from what we see. Again, we don't know what Unai's like, do we? Like,
Yeah.
and again, that's I'm not trying to make anyone feel any way about anybody here. All I'm saying is we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And
Very.
right now,
Yes.
we don't know why Harvey Elliott's not playing.
It's weird that like I just think there's been so many displays of faith in him, like in the signing. Like there's an obligation on that, right?
Yeah, 10 games. So that's
Yeah.
why he's not in the squad, right? So I think, right, here's the thing, right? I think the money, we're running out of time, so we can't even talk about Ollie Watkins here, mate. But clearly, that money that was going to be spent on Elliot must have to be reallocated to sign a striker in January, right?
If, and he was given the number 9, and like, do you know what I mean? I'm just like
Yeah.
obligation, given the number 9. I'm kind of like, it feels like we'd put
It's a bit of a
double.
poison chalice, though, isn't it? 9 at Villa.
Yeah, well, very true. As you know, I saw a lot of Liverpool fans on the timeline being like, "Oh, we've got to recall him in January," and it's
You
like
think they will?
it'd be really, really interesting because sometimes, obviously, if it's like a obligation, depending on certain performance related stuff, like obviously that's different. But sometimes you get like you can't. There isn't those recall clauses on deals with obligations, right? Because obviously, if a club has an obligation to buy a player, it's not sometimes you can't recall them. So that will be really, really interesting. But he hasn't played. Here we go. Hasn't played since the 2nd of October, and even then he was given 4 minutes. That was the game at Everton. So well over a month now.
And
So
so he's made 5 appearances, and the rumored appearance, obligation to buy clause is 10 appearances.
well,
I don't know whether that's 10 league appearances, but it's
like, would you waste one of those? Like, so if we brought him on for 4 minutes against Everton, if there's like a 10 game thing which you're actively trying to avoid, like, would you give him? It's really, really, it's
yep.
weird, mate.
And here's the thing, right? There's probably about 18 games between now and January.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All comps, yep.
There's a lot of football to be played, and there's AFCON, right, which won't affect us too badly, but you would imagine Guesshand won't be around in December, January time. So it's interesting. But yeah, as I say, we don't know. We only know what we know. But I think it's fair to assume that he's not in the long-term plans, and I think it's also safe to assume that he probably does go back in January, which is it's a dying shame. But I think this, like, one thing that and I said this to my old man at the game, uh, Cash, for example, we're really guilty of this. Every summer we come on here, Emery's going to want a right back. Emery really wants a right back. He's played him for 4.5, however, like, yeah, he's played him the whole time. He's played him the whole time. When there's been other options, they may not have been as good, but he's played every single time. Where's Garcia, by the way? Who's Garcia? You
Yeah,
been a
I saw it. I saw it in
Garcia?
his pre-match notes. He said he was injured, but I'm like,
Yeah, nah,
what?
he's Mafia's got him, mate. I don't even remember us signing a Garcia. But no, the point I was making was, you know, we kind of project that, right? We are projecting the he doesn't fancy Cash. despite
Yeah,
playing him in all of these games and never signing
yeah,
anybody that's
it's very
better than
true.
him, right? We project that. I think this is the first time, maybe John Duran is the exception, but this is the first time. And again, he didn't sign Duran. Duran was already there, but this is the first time we've signed a player, and I think it's fair to say that Emery doesn't fancy him, right?
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, it's you kind of felt like it was the Marlon trajectory, but even Marlon was getting like sub appearances and stuff like that.
He was.
Elliot's just gone AWOL, so yeah, definitely want to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely. This Zoom is about to end, but penny for Watkins because he would have died to have got that deflected goal like Marlon
Yeah, I
did.
thought he was great today.
Yeah, I think he put himself about well, and could have had a couple of goals, but on another day, hopefully he comes back after the break. Not being in that England squad will do a wonder, a world of good, I think. But yeah, guys, this seems about to end. So if you enjoyed, let us know in the comment section down below. It's always good doing a podcast after these wins. Dan and I really enjoy it. So yeah, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.